Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Look who's joining me today on Word Balloon. Really happy to welcome back Chirstian Alamy. Welcome back,
Hey everyone.
dude.
Hi everyone.
Good
Hey
to see
John.
you. Yeah.
Same here. Same here. It's been a long time.
We Chicago Greek comic book guys, we got to stick together.
Yeah, we do.
Good to see you. Hey, congratulations on that wonderful Wonder Woman Black and Gold issue.
Thank
that you
you.
did a couple months ago. Is that the first time you've done a story fully, the full art, both inks and finishes and everything?
Oh no. I've done that a lot in the past. That's how I started. Like first in France. In 1988, I published a graphic novel. I did a lot of short stories in various magazines. And when I came to New York in 1992, I met Archie Goodwin. He is the one who opened the doors for me at DC. I drew Lobo. I drew Joker stories, the Demon. I forget now, like various stuff. But I was always slow, and I struggled with the monthly comic book. I drew NMAS also, and and through the years it became more and more difficult, and I switched to inks mostly. It's the first time in over 15 years probably that I drew a story. Yeah,
that's great. I'm going to bring up the art, and hold on one second. I'll do that. And while I'm doing that, this is I love that they do Superman Red and Blue, and now Wonder Woman Black and Gold.
I did a Batman Black and White about 20 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. Here's your story. Are you there still?
Yep.
There you go. Okay. Yep. And refresh our memory about the Batman Black and White that you drew.
It was the last story that Julius Schwartz ever came up with. And it was scripted by Dan Raspler, who was still an editor at DC at that time. It was 8 pages. The editor was Mark Chiarello.
Wow! Oh, that's great. I love Mark's stuff. Yeah, I mean, he's got a great eye, and I've always appreciated him as a
terrific editor, very
absolutely,
talented editor
man.
with interesting projects. He was very much, in my opinion, as an editor, in some ways, a spiritual son of Archie Goodwin when it came to do interesting projects.
I agree with you, man. I loved the solo books that he curated that spotlighted all the various artists and stuff. Those were
I did enjoy also that Wednesday comics. Do you remember that, the newspaper format? Like
which strip did you do for Wednesday?
I didn't get to do any on that one. I regret to say, but I really enjoyed the format and like the whole thing. Like
100%. Oh my God, I still have my paper weekly, editions of that, and I did buy the collection as well. No, I'm such a fan. Absolutely, man. So here, let's scroll through. Look at this art. This is just gorgeous, man. Look at that.
Thank you.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's been a while, so it felt weird. And after such a long time, I wasn't sure I would feel about it. In fact, it's like a glove, like riding a bicycle, I guess. Except it seems I ride better now than I used to, at least I hope. And I was still very slow. It took me a long time to do, frankly, but I truly enjoyed it.
Did you also write the story?
No, it's my old buddy Pete Tomasi who did it.
Oh, beautiful.
So he's the one who called me. He's like, "Hey, Chirstian, I got a story coming up. Would you like to do it?" I was like, "Oh boy, let me think about it." Of course, I called him right back and say, "Yeah, of course, I got to do that."
That's awesome.
And that's how it happened.
Wonderful. That's great, man. Did there's been a lot of turmoil at DC, a lot of changes and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't I would imagine I hope you still have connections over there, and I hope
very few. I mean, I've seen I'm probably now at like my 8th generation of editors. They go so fast, and these editors they hire people their age, people they know, people they grew up with. It's normal. It is the way it is. one thing I would enjoy doing nowadays, honestly, if I had a choice, would be a cover gig, because I can do that, like, on a regular basis. Pages, I would need still, like, it would have to be, scheduled up front with a lot of time and all that stuff. So it's more complicated for me.
I understand, man. I want to talk about your collaborators, and it's like, people like Patrick Gleason and Doug Monkey and stuff and the like. I'll tell you, Chris, what I really would hope would be that you might partner up with some writer and find some sort of create your own thing that you might want to do. Do you have ideas that you'd want to pursue?
I've been thinking a lot about that. I still have a project with a French buddy of mine who's a writer I've worked with like 30 years ago. But he's running after money at the same time, and he's always busy. So we have like the layout of a project, if you will, crime story. But it doesn't seem to take off because there's always something else gets in the way one way or the other. So I don't know. Who knows?
Well, I hope that works out, or some other opportunity. I mean, look at this stuff, everybody. I mean, really, this is a pro's pro that has truly decades of wonderful experience and stuff. And I would love to, yeah. And I mean, honestly, man, no, you're one of the greats. And again, this is proof that you can still do a great, complete job. I mean,
I'm flattered. Listen, I gotta tell you the truth. When I did that story, I was like, oh, I gotta do it. It's been such a long time. Nobody even knows I ever drew anything. And I figured, like, so when it came out and all, I was quite happy. Hey, look, guys, like, that's kind of like makes me feel better. That's there's a bit of sometimes you need to give a little to the ego, and so it can rest.
No, I understand, man. No, and again, this is great stuff. I would hope too. Geez, I mean, maybe Pete can help you get in touch with whoever the editors are on some of these anthology things that they've been putting out to celebrate the 80th anniversaries of the various heroes. And those are great little 8-page
I love
series.
that. I love that. Pete is the same. We speak with Pete. We'd love to do something together, but he tells me he cannot, because I'm so slow, he cannot afford to write something up front such a long time before he gets paid for it or like whatever. And I understand it. I can do it, but that doesn't mean everyone can. And it becomes a problem. It's I've learned a long time ago not to depend after 30 plus years in comics, not to depend on it too much, because I know how difficult it is. And after I stopped thinking Green Lantern with Doug Mankey on Doug Mankey's art, I pretty much stopped hustling to get work all the time. I had done it for 30 years, and I need a break. I need to focus on things I might be more interesting for me, like this, But sure. It's harder to put together. It's.
I want to show. Am I right? Was this you or no?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Look at that.
Doug, I mean, Doug's pencils, obviously.
Yes. But yeah, man, no, this was, you did great. You did great work on Green Lantern and then certainly Aquaman,
Well, I've been lucky because I worked with like two really interesting artists. Like Doug is obviously one of the powerhouses in the comic art world. He's a real, like, he's a super artist, a great guy too. And it's great working with a guy like this when you get your pages. I still ink like manually, like on paper. He sends me his pencils. We do it the old-fashioned way, and it's beautiful. I learned a lot by working with him. Like it was like going back to school in a way, and that felt great. That's beautiful. Plus, he's a wonderful guy, so we got along. It's a beautiful experience. And with Pat Gleason, Pat was originally a protege of Doug's. And I was the first inker, I think, professionally, almost like that Pat ever worked with. And again, the editor, you'll never guess who it was, Pete Tomasi, back in the old days at DC.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was a JSA issue during the Jeff Johns run. And then I inked Pat like in his beginnings, and he's a super creative artist. Everybody knows that about him. He comes up with like crazy stuff all the time, and now he's doing great, and it's fully deserved. So I've been fortunate, like get to work with like really solid creative artists. As an inker, it makes your life easier. Doesn't make the work faster because they both love details, but it's rewarding.
I understand. Ben Hayes says some nice things here. He's like, he first saw your artwork on either the first Lobo annual or maybe Lobo's Back when Bisley didn't finish.
That's my first comic in the US. Lobo's Back 4.
That's awesome. And he says also he always looks forward to seeing you inking Doug. You two are an amazing art team. I would agree with that. Absolutely.
Thank you, Ben. That's
really... And is Pat at Marvel now?
I think I kind of read online what people are doing and all that. He's doing Spider-Man. He's writing and drawing.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is I'm so happy that I know it started with Superman when he was doing Superman, that he was doing some writing as well. So it's wonderful to see that he's getting the opportunity to do both.
Yeah, no, Pat's wonderful. Pat is like
smart dude.
And again, it's very creative guy. Like he comes up with stuff. So you're like, oh man, where did he come up with that? That's just that's just Pat.
Do you have any good Archie Goodwin stories?
Oh yeah, I got plenty of Archie Goodwin stories. Like first of all, the best Archie Goodwin story. The reason I met Archie was like I was like 19 when I started in France, and then by the time I'm 22, my ex-wife, who was then my girlfriend, decided to come to New York to study. Me, I could never afford to go to New York study or like whatever. I was already working comics, but I was like, okay, I'll take a plane ticket and go visit. My French publisher was the ones who were translating at the time Watchmen. They had translated Dark Knight Returns. They had translated all the big DC titles, and because of that, they do people at DC. And I was like, could you get me just an appointment when I'm there? Like I'm in New York for 2 weeks. Like maybe And they said, okay. And the Phyllis Hume, who was the lady in charge of foreign rights for DC then, got me an appointment. And I met a wonderful gentleman named Jim Chadwick, who was at DC then had a long career in other places, and he's back at DC now.
Yes.
And Jim saw me. I had a few drawings under my arm, and he's like, listen, I hope you understand we don't usually get people in like that. It's a favor to your French publisher, and don't expect too much and all that. I was like, no, thank you, sir, I really understand. All right. He opens my portfolio. He starts looking. He's like, do you mind if I call Archie Goodwin? We're like, oh, are you kidding? No, I don't mind. And Archie came in and was like, oh, hello, Chirstian. Always the wonderful gentleman that he was. And he looked through the drawings. He said, well, these are really nice. Would you like to work with us? And just like that.
Wow.
And then I couldn't stop smiling for like, we'll call you in 2 days, like whatever. I couldn't stop smiling for 2 days. I couldn't believe what happened. And 2 days later, a gentleman named Neil Posner calls me, the late Neil as well. And Neil was a wonderful guy. And he's the one who got me in. As I had my peak at first. And like, would you like to do Lobo? Then you can do Legends at Dark Knight. You could do Sandman. And I was offered a lot of stuff. My mistake was to think I had all the time in the world and I would do them all. And in fact, things work in a different way. But back to Archie, one of my best memories was like to one time have lunch with him and Chris Claremont in Brooklyn. Two of the guys I used to read in my small bedroom in Paris as a kid in translated comics in French, having no idea I'd ever go to New York, like nothing. And I'm eating in a pizzeria in Brooklyn with these two guys, having a party at Chris Claremont's house one time, stuff like that. And walking back to Manhattan, taking the train with Archie, go back to the offices at DC, and talk about movies, about various stuff. He was a wonderful guy, like fascinating, full of stories, and yet very reserved at the same time. And man, I loved him. I really loved him. He was great. And then when Neil Posner passed away, sadly, and I remember being with Archie at the memorial for Neil, Archie sharing memories of him and all that. And not so long after, being again at the memorial for Archie himself. And all that. So that was two other guys who were really important to me when I started at DC. Died like not long after. I still think about them very often.
I'm sure, man. No, that's great, and I can appreciate that. I wish I had a chance to meet both of them, particularly Archie, because I am friends with so many people like yourself that I always have wonderful stories, and I certainly respected him as a writer and an editor. And yeah, again, I mean,
no one's got a bad story about Archie, a bad story about him. That's not possible. That's just like.
Have I shown you? It's on YouTube, and I don't know if even the Word Balloon watchers have seen it or not. For a long time, I was afraid to put it on YouTube publicly because I don't own it. But there's this great documentary that was made in 1978 or 79 by a Canadian television company, and it was a look at both DC and Marvel, and it was a part of a show called Behind the Scenes. Wow, and I got it. Do you know Doug Klaba, don't you, from Chicago?
No, maybe I don't. No, I
okay. Doug's a comic book artist and stuff. He did a lot of stuff with Moonstone and worked with Alex Ross on Project Superpowers for Dynamite. Well, anyway, Doug bought a little 16 millimeter film version of this television show, which I'm assuming was distributed by an educational film distributor because my assumption is that maybe teachers in art classes would show this film to say, hey, there are beyond advertising or other careers with art, you might be able to work in comics. Yeah. And again, this was made in 78 or 79. And there's a wonderful portion of it. They're at both DC and Marvel, but there's a wonderful portion of it with Archie at Marvel with Stan Lee going over the drawings and the debut of the Human Fly.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, and the gimmick for the Human Fly initially was you didn't know who his secret identity was. And then the first issue, there were like 4 or 5 different identities. And so it's just him and Archie going over the drawings and looking them over. It's amazing. It's cool. So to share that with you.
You're talking about this thing, telling young people, hey, there's possibilities other than advertising and all that. In France, when I was young, we had museums about comics. Comic books were really respected. But as far as getting education in comics or whatever, it did not exist. There was nothing. Nowadays, both here and there, you have wonderful, you get schools, you get courses, you can do. A part of me wishes I had access to that when I was young. That would have been totally different. I mean, I'm completely self-taught. I never had the chance to work with older artists or learn I took a class drawing for about 6 months, about a year maybe. That's all I did, a live drawing class, which was a good thing to do, actually helped me a lot. But beyond that, man, I think it's wonderful now for the kid, not to mention the digital tools they get access to and all that. This business had changed more both on the publishing side and the technical side in the past 15 years than it had in the previous 80 years.
I agree with you, man. And honestly, it's been amazing, even as a layman, to observe all the changes and stuff. It's pretty amazing. God, man, I can think of a bunch of online schools that we should hook you up with in terms of where you could even, talk about inking and storytelling and things like that.
I'd love to. Listen, I'd love to. I'm not sure I'm a good advice. I'm pretty hard on myself. I'm afraid to be hard on others when it comes to that shit, to the work. But I'm happy to answer questions. I'm not a great optimist when it comes to that line of work, to be honest with you. So it's really my views is if you want to for young people, my advice, I always give them to them. If you want to work in comics, you really need to have the holy fire in you. You need to love that stuff so much, because I used to have that holy fire when I was a kid. But I trapped myself in the dreams of a 16-year-old kid, okay? And down the years, it's not always the best dream, the one you wanted to be trapped in, so you gotta think about these things. It's not an easy life. It's not easy financially. it will suck up all your time.
True.
So you have to really understand these things. And I didn't when I started. I was good enough to start very young and to have the doors open for me rapidly. A bit too much, maybe in retrospect. I was not up to the what was expected of me. I think I could say.
I understand. Yes. Well, as you said, I mean, I know that again, you're a great inker, but it is time consuming. I've talking to Brian Hitch. I know Brian, also a very detailed working artist and stuff. Wonderful artist. But I know in the last couple of years, he has told me here on the show that he has made some shortcuts to his work to kind of get a little faster, and it seems to have worked for him.
I'm jealous because I've spent the late 90s trying to make shortcuts in my work, trying to that would allow me to be faster. And I don't know if I don't know what I did wrong, but what I got is like bad art, and that was still taking as long. And so it was just a big frustration. That's where at some point I kind of I was also going through a divorce. There was all sorts of stories that was a kind of pile up. That's why I switched to inks a lot. I was like, I can do that at least like faster and kind of, ease up a bit. But when I look what you're posting now, I'm happy to get back to draw a bit too. That it's nice to see. It's pleasant to think, oh, I can do that. Like that's.
I so relate. I used to feel that way when I was writing articles for Boxing Illustrated, and man, it was like tortured getting it done. And then when it would come out on the newsstands, I'd be like, "Oh, that's pretty cool, man!" You have that wonderful satisfaction of
there's this release. When it's done, it's just like
absolutely. I know, I get it. Well, that's why. Honestly, man, that's why I do more audio than I do writing these days. Just because it's it's easier for me to talk to you and like, hey, there's a podcast, beautiful.
There's this fine balance. I guess Brian Hitch found it, which I never found, like between pushing yourself and finding some comfort. That's the one thing I never did well. When I work, I cannot think about deadlines. I just can't. It just escapes me. It's just like it's
does it paralyze you? Deadlines? Do they?
No, that's they used to. And at some point, what happened is like I started this way, that way, this way. I started not to care. So I was like, fuck the deadline. I'll just do the work and happens what happens. So that put me in trouble. Some projects I was late. It's like I did an enemy ace story with written by oh my god, what's his name? The guy who wrote Preacher. I just had a brain fart.
Garth Ennis.
Garth Ennis. The great Garth Ennis. And I just could not finish the first book. That was that period of time where I was trying to find ways to work faster and I couldn't. I laid down the first book in pencil. I finished about half the whole book was laid out. It was 2 prestige formats. The first book was all laid out. I finished some of the pencils, even inked 2 or 3 pages. But I was so over the deadline that I couldn't do anything anymore, and I just quit basically. Then thankfully Chris Weston stepped in, accepted it. He took my work over and finished it. It looked beautiful. Wow. And all that. He really did that. And for the second volume, based on my designs and everything, they got the great Russ Heath back to do war stories for.
I remember that absolutely, man. Yeah,
and all that.
Beautiful.
So it's bittersweet for me. I mean, it's not everything works, and it is what it is.
I'm glad that you also did an issue of Multiversity.
With Doug. That's.
Doug,
I was happy to be a part with Doug. I've been a part of a lot of big projects and various interesting stuff. We did with Grant Morrison. We did a wonderful Superman Beyond that was in 2 volumes. and it even came like in 3D with like the 3D glasses and all
Yes.
that. Like that was awesome. And it's Grant's crazy take on things. That's always fun because you never know what you're gonna get to draw or ink in my case. Like you never know. It's just like, oh, really? That's what we're doing, huh? Okay, like
Is
that's
for the Superman Beyond, I remember that it was 3D. I'm assuming the 3D process happens after your art in post
yeah,
production. Am I
yeah.
correct?
It
Okay.
does happen in post production, and then the only problem with the 3D once printed is like when you read without the glasses, it's confusing.
Sure.
So they did two printings, if I recall. I mean, I know you can find both editions, like normal and with the 3D.
I understand. Yes. No, that's cool. No,
And
and
it all
again,
ties in with a multiversity later because Grant always builds on what he did years before. He keeps always like this tapestry of mental crazy shit. Like I don't know.
I hear you, man. No, I understand. I've only had two conversations on the record with Grant. They both have been fantastic. I was just talking to him right about 2 years ago now when he was doing Green Lantern with Liam Sharp.
Yeah, I've
And that
read
was
that. I've seen their stuff. It's beautiful.
oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Great designs for crazy Green Lanterns beyond the Lantern Corps that we knew. I thought they had a lot of good new ideas for various Green Lanterns and stuff. I like the guy who had the volcano for a head,
Yeah.
and it was
But there you go. That's you can feel the Grant Morrison in a story. Even looking at it, just looking at it. That's
absolutely. So tell me about the difference, like working with Doug and working with a guy like Pat Gleason.
um. Doug is more structured. Doug is very solid classically. His stuff is solid. You can close your eyes and just follow the thing. Pat is fluid. I don't know if that makes sense. So sometimes you're like, is this gonna work? Like, and you gotta trust that he knows what he's doing. After all, that's why he got the job. And
Sure.
and it does work. But sometimes I found it counterintuitive. So I would say like Doug is a rock. Doug is like even he looks like a rock. He's a mountain,
Oh
like
my God,
he's
yeah,
solid.
weightlifter.
It's
Yeah.
just like and Pat is fluid. That's the best I can explain it. Like that's the best I can come up with. That's and both have things they do in very similar ways. The rendering textures, for example, things like that. Maybe it's because Pat started like that training with Doug when he was young. That could be that. And both are a lot of fun to ink, and makes me proud to have worked with them. Like to it's something I cherish. Like that's.
I'm
And I
with
know
you,
it
man.
stays. I know that's something that stays behind me. Like that. That's it's nice to know.
Oh no, truly, a lot of your runs I know are obviously still in publication, and I
I know because it makes me a bit of money, which is always nice. Like
that's great, man. No, that's wonderful that you're getting the royalties and stuff. That's good. Are you following? Have you been going to the movies, Marvel and DC, and the TV shows?
Yeah,
Are you?
I've seen the movies. I have fairly um, consensual classic taste in films, I believe. I've enjoyed the Marvel universe greatly. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's not all great, but like, at its best, it's phenomenal. It's spectacular, and as a whole tapestry, it's a lot of fun to follow. I'm a bit less interested in the shows they came up with.
Okay.
Loki, I stopped at some point. I don't know why. I
Oh
could not,
wow.
even though I love the cast. I liked a lot of things about it, but I never really liked Loki as a character, even as a kid when I was reading
Okay.
Thor. Oh, Loki again. Oh God, like that. I don't know why. I can't explain it.
No, hey man, I get it. A lot of us are like that in terms of there's just 60 years of success with the X-Men. I'm just not a big X-Men guy.
Yeah,
Never was.
I am, but only I'm like most readers. I like the period that I grew up with, which happened to have been the Claremont Byrne, Terry Austin. So it's hard to beat. Dave Cockrum, John Byrne on the X-Men. For me,
Sure.
that's where it's at. Although I've read like some of the great runs, like Grant Morrison, even Joss Whedon, which I don't really want to advertise for, but let's give him credit where it's due.
No, it was a great run. Absolutely.
Not to mention the wonderful art of
John Cassaday,
and all that stuff. That's one of my pet peeves. Actually, the artists are not mentioned enough, I find, anymore. So I want to tell everyone just one little fact: the artist always does the heavy lifting. He's the one who does the long, fastidious work that brings all that stuff to life.
Yes.
And they should always be credited, always. You cannot mention the writer without the artists. I think it's important.
I agree, man. And truly, I think on Word Balloon, I would lean on artists, or rather writers, because I was a sports writer. So, oh, look, Midnight wants to say hello. There we go. Very nice.
Hey, it's my friend Terry.
Oh, that's cool. Excellent.
Yeah, he's the owner of the wonderful Third Coast Comic Store in Rogers Park.
Oh, sure, absolutely, man. That's excellent. That's very, very good. But I am with you on the fact that artists deserve more credit, and I was a little gun shy because I felt more comfortable talking to writers. But luckily, having friends like yourself and Phil Jimenez and Rags, people like that have kind of taught me what to ask and what to look for in terms of good art storytelling. Doug is another guy like that. God, I wish you could see. You could see I've got art on the walls. And Doug did a beautiful Superman for me.
Oh, yeah?
at a New York show just a couple of years ago. And it's one of my favorite pieces. Absolutely.
I remember being at the different conventions with Doug, and sometimes we're, a bit of a downtime. He does commissions for people and all that. And quite a few times, like, man, you're going to give that away. Just give it to me.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, and that's funny. Yes, I meant Rags Morales. Absolutely, man. So, that's nice. And Doc is right here. You're an inking stud. There you go, dude. 100%.
Thanks, Terry.
That's awesome, man. Did you go to C2E2 even just to go and walk around?
Okay, I've been to all the first C2E2s. I did not go this last one. I have no. Actually, I don't really enjoy taking tables at Artist Alley. I only do it if I'm with Doug. On my own, I don't draw enough people to make it interesting. Not financially, and not. I mean, if they give me a table, I'll take it. But
sure,
it's not really busy. So if I'm with Doug or like whatever, it's fun. Seeing the my friends, the people I know and all that. Otherwise, I just go to walk around. Say hi to people I know, and that's the way I prefer to enjoy conventions. Frankly, just go in like anybody else and say hi to people I like.
No, I hear you, man. And also again coming from France, and as you say, you stay in touch with your one friend, the writer over there. Do you have contacts still as far as editors and publishers?
I do. Yeah. I through my first publishers, who are basically close friends, they're like family now. These two guys who took me in when I was 19 under their wing and a lot. They all the people in place at the biggest publishing houses now are people who started with us, basically. People we knew from back then who were young like us, and they hold the key to the kingdom now, basically. So if I had a project I needed to meet someone, I can do that. That's always nice to know. That's.
Do you get back there to France?
I go once a year.
Great.
I see my folks are older now. My dad is like almost 90.
Wow.
And so I go visit once a year. I see my friends, my family, and all that. So it's nice, but it's never really work oriented. I mean, I see the one or two people, like I said, who are like family, and but that's about it. And the time always goes too fast. I just want my parents to be able to see my daughter. And so it's mostly family, we don't get to do much other than that, but it feels good to go back.
That's great, man. Yeah. No, that's really important. And I'm the great comedian Harold Ramis, who did so many movies and television in LA. in his last, about 10 or 15 years, moved back to Chicago. And he's like, I want my kids to know their grandparents and stuff. And I'm like, that's beautiful, man. So no, I think that's great.
When you leave your 20, it's one thing to go far away. You go live your life. It's adventure. You go to I spent my 20s in New York, even though I was, nothing predestined me for it or not. So that I had fun. It was tough, but it was fun. So I had an interesting life. But you get older and you realize you've been away for a long time. It's now 30 years.
Yeah.
And I spent longer here in the US than I had originally in France,
Wow.
And people disappear, people get older, things, and then you start to reassess a bit. You're like, oh, wait a minute, wow, what happened? That's my mom had known the same thing. My mom is Greek, and she left Greece to move to France. Met when she was young, met my dad. So I was born and raised in France, and without ever planning it, I'm like my mom. I live, and I saw her being away from her family and all that when her parents were older, etc.
Sure.
And even though it's closer, obviously, France to Greece, it's like going to, it's not even 3 hours in a plane. But
okay.
But still,
yeah,
I guess we're a family of wanderer, even though we're not adventurers at all. We're just happened.
What brought you from New York to Chicago?
A girl. From New York to Chicago. Sorry. Well, in a way, you could say that my wife, my actual wife, not the previous one. No, in New York, I got sick at some point. I have Crohn's disease, and in 2004, I fell very ill. I had no insurance, like most artists, and I deteriorated very quickly over a year.
Wow.
I weighed 110 pounds. I couldn't walk anymore. I was shutting down. The doctor told me, listen, if you can't go to France because you're gonna die. And so she put me on a plane. My wife, we were dating at the time.
Wow.
I barely made the trip. I barely made it alive. During the trip, seriously, that was really bad. I arrived in emergency. I had surgeries. It took me 3 years to get over that, to get better. Now I gain weight and all that. You wouldn't recognize me, but and I got this under control. But I left my condo in New York. I had a great condo. Incidentally, the reason I found for a broke ass artist kid, I had 1,000 square feet in Brooklyn with a view on Manhattan. I saw the Twins. I saw 9/11 from my windows, sadly.
Wow.
But I could also see the Empire State Building and the Chrysler and all that. So I had the one thing nobody can get in New York, a great place, because my landlord knew Archie Goodwin. Just insane. I was living in Manhattan. I got to tell you that quick. I was living in Manhattan when I first went to New York. I lived a bit in Soho. It was super expensive. So then I went in Hell's Kitchen.
Yes.
And it was really shitty. I was on the 46 at the corner with 9th.
I know I know exactly what you're talking about. Go on.
So
yes.
First night in there, somebody tried to break in. It was really bad. And so one time up at the Village Voice, I see Brooklyn, and I see big places for cheap. I go there. It was Williamsburg, but that was Williamsburg in '92, not today. And so nobody wanted to go there. Not cab drivers wouldn't go there and all that. So in between the old factories and that near the river, I found this great place, 1,000 square feet with a view. And I took it. Except the landlord, it turned out to be a friend later. He saw that I was French. He was like, yeah, I don't know about that. It was like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I do comics. Oh yeah, who do you work for? I know people in comics. I'm like, well, I work with Archie Goodwin. Archie Goodwin, you know Archie? And the next day he calls me. He's like, well, I thought about it. I'd like you to have the condo. By chance, my landlord and Archie Goodwin's wives were working together. So the two of them were friends and lived in the same neighborhood.
Wow.
That's how I got my condo. Thanks, Archie. Again, it's insane.
That's excellent.
In a city of 8 million people, after looking at an ad in the Village Voice,
that's fantastic. Oh, I'm so glad Doc is bringing this up. and I know your fascination with this. He wants me to ask you about the plane in your living room and the cockpit, rather. I guess the cockpit in your living room.
No! Back in the old days when I was doing NMEAs, I had well, that was before. Like now, if you want to pull a reference for a World War II airplane, you can put a CAD 3D construction and all that. Back then, I had a book with plans for model kits, so I built a little model kit and all that stuff. And then I was like was 72nd scale plan that was quite small, and by measuring it, I was so broke I didn't have like a cardboard. I wanted to build one in cardboard in my living room, so I was cutting the back board of my paper notepads, and I built this Messerschmitt 109 cockpit like in scale and all that. I would put it between two chairs. I would sit in the middle. I would ask my wife to take a photo to see how that looked, the perspective and all that. So yeah, that was one of the.
That's genius, man.
I probably still have a photo or two somewhere. Like, but the really embarrassing part is back then, no digital cameras. Okay, so
right.
There was this Polish pharmacy in Williamsburg there. Okay. I had to bring my pictures every day, or like if I took several, like to get developed. And it's the same girl who's develops the photos who is at the counter, and she sees all the photos of you like posing like that and all that. And she just, and you're like, thanks, man. Like just.
Hey, I have a feeling, especially back in those days, can you imagine some of the pictures that?
I can't even. I'm like.
There's a radio host, Gary Meyer, and I knew Gary, and he used to tell this story when he worked at. I don't know. You remember the photomats, the little huts?
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay, he worked at a photomat, and he said one Thanksgiving or after Thanksgiving, he had a roll of film from somebody, and it was a Thanksgiving dinner scene, and everybody stood up. They're naked and they're pointing at the turkey.
No.
That's
like brilliant.
10 people nude, all pointing at the turkey. And he's like, I don't want to know what happened after that.
Oh my God. That's awesome. You have to,
So I think you
should have scanned that stuff. You put a black band in front of the eyes, but you gotta at some point stuff has got to go public. It's too good.
Actually, it's so funny that you say that. And in fact, I'm glad we were discussing this last night on my podcast Kinescope, and I guess there are these weird pictures of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis when they were still a comedy team, and they're literally these nude pictures of them in like a steam bath together, and there's a picture of them in the shower right there next to each other, and yeah, you ever want to know what they look like without clothes? There they are, and they're very easy to find online. They're all over the
Hollywood in the 20s or in the 60s. If people had cell phones, that's
yes,
we can't even imagine
all the crazy parties. 100%,
forget it.
Absolutely, man. So I think you're fine with your cardboard cutout.
Oh yeah, I'm good. I'll even if I find a photo, I'll put it online on Twitter, like whatever. Just like
that's awesome.
I'm good.
Yeah, honestly, Chirstian, you really, and I know it's funny because we were talking about this preparing for tonight and everything. You need to really like maybe do a lot more social media, because think of all the wonderful images that you've made over the years, and remind people about how great you are, and maybe that would inspire. I want you to get the work that you can handle.
The thing. But I'm protecting myself.
Okay.
I'm opinionated. And even though I share most of the I do share the opinions most of the people in my profession share in this world, this artistic world. I'm totally in line and in sync with everybody else on most social, societal, political opinions. I'm also a big mouth sometimes, and I don't want to feel like if I have something to say or if I want to add a nuance to something that I have to put my foot in my mouth or like be called on about it and all that.
I don't blame you, man.
I also don't think that what the world needs is one more opinion, even if it's mine.
Well, I don't want I don't want you to get in trouble with what you say. I'm just saying Because honestly, I was like that too. Really on message boards, I used to be very political, and
Mhm.
every now and then, every now and then, I might let something slip today. But for the most part, I just say, "Hey, I like this book. Hey, I read this article. That's amazing. This
That's what
movie
I
is
do on
great."
Twitter. On Twitter, I tweet
Yeah,
if I got something to say specific, very rarely. Otherwise, I can comment on what somebody else say, put a like, or just simply see what people
sure.
are up to. That's I don't really enjoy
I don't know why you're the Forrest Gump of comics, but I'll
because
accept that.
okay, when I was 19, I was Alan Moore's chauffeur in France, for example, during a convention.
Tell that
Uh,
story. I forgot about that story. That's
okay,
excellent.
I've kind of met so many people like in weird circumstances that Terry always calls me the Forrest Gump. So back in 1989, there was this big convention in Grenoble in France, which is at the feet of the Alpes mountains.
Okay.
That was the first of its kind. It was supposed to rival Angoulême, which is the great convention in
Yes,
France.
indeed. Of course. Yes.
It was there was a kind of political war. The guy who used to run Angoulême had been fired and decided to get back at the other guys by creating his own convention. There was also of political differences between the two, and everything is political always.
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, we're my small publisher back then, who had published Watchmen. I'd had Alan Dave Gibbons drew some stuff for them, not for DC about Watchmen. Some of the things that were later published as the Watchmen portfolio, like color covers and paintings, were done for my small publisher in France.
Wow.
And they had a privileged relation with Alan Moore. They also published V for Vendetta. And they knew him well. So he came to France with his two daughters, who were kids at the time. I think they're writers now and all that. And he was with his wife and friend, and I was the one who was, I was accompanying the convention. I was in the middle of drawing my first graphic novel and not doing much, frankly. So it's like, Chirstian, we're gonna rent a car. You're gonna be Alan Moore's driver. So I go pick the whole family at the airport. I drive them to the hotel from the convention and all that stuff. That was my job. Like I was the Alan Moore chauffeur. And I
Did he?
remember back then my English wasn't that great. I didn't have 30 years in the US. And Chirstian, and I had a hard time understanding what he was telling me. So I was like, yes, sir, could you please repeat? That was really funny.
Sure.
First time. Sorry,
Go on.
go ahead.
No, please continue, and then I'll ask a question.
My God, in New York, after I did Lobo, one time I went to dinner with Alan Grant, who was visiting New York. Alan Grant, Scottish, Grant Morrison. And he was talking to me, and I swear I was like, oh my God, what is he saying? I was so new in New York. I was like, oh my God, I can't understand what he's talking about.
When I talk to Mark Miller and he gets excited and he
Yeah.
starts talking fast and his Scottish brogue, I'll be like, okay, wait, I think you said this. And he's like, yeah. And in fact, he told me that one of his American editors, he'd be talking and get excited about something and starts talking faster. And the guy'd always answer like, that's hilarious. And one time he's like, well, I'm really sorry, I'm going to be late on a deadline because my uncle passed away and I got to take care of family stuff. And the guy's like, yeah, that's hilarious.
That's
like,
exactly.
oh, it's not hilarious. No. So
it's the equivalent of when you don't remember somebody's name. You're like, hey,
yes,
the same thing.
Or I love Francesco Francaviglia. He's fantastic.
Yeah,
and I was asking him about he was starting to do some Marvel work, and he goes, I hope someday I work with Daredevil. And I'm like, pardon me? He's like, Daredevil, and I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, Matt Murdock. I'm like, oh, Daredevil, of course, of course. So did Alan know when you were driving him that you were an artist and everything? And
I don't know. I think they told him, he's one of your artists. Oh, cheers, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Like I had Bill Sienkiewicz was there, Dave Gibbons. They gave me the usual, we're gonna break your hands, kids. The classic stuff. That reminds me, when I first went to DC, when I first met. I told you before, this business changed more in the past 15 years than it did previous 80 years.
Sure.
When I first got there, I was there once a week at DC, at least once a week, giving, hanging out with editors, especially on Friday night, when you deliver your last pages, you go out, or, various days just delivering pages, talking to people, meeting all sorts of people. And I got to meet like Julie Schwartz, Carmine Infantino, like Joe Orlando, Dick Giordano. Like I got to meet all the old school that was on the way out, basically, when I arrived. And they all gave me like, "Hey, kid, how you doing?" Like that kind of thing. You're like, "Can you do a page a day?" All right, hey, we'll break our hands. Like same thing. Like, welcome, kid. Like that kind of stuff. And
sorry, buddy. Hold on. There we go. I apologize.
And no, please. And what happened is that I was thinking, like, these guys, I was working pretty much the same way they did when they started. And nowadays, the younger artists work, I mean, it's still the same work, but it has changed dramatically. I also think like the departure of DC from New York, frankly, was an earthquake. We don't realize how much like publishing and New York go together. These companies had been there. That was a New York thing.
Absolutely.
Having them attached to Hollywood now, it changes everything. It's a completely different landscape.
Well, and also we don't know really. I mean, Discovery is now in charge of DC, and what does that mean? And I even get the sense that even the people at DC that are higher up aren't sure what the beyond this year or next year.
At this point, I wouldn't even know what they think or what their doubts are. I've never been more out of the loop.
I hear you. I do think though that truly, I believe this. I'm not trying to cover my ass by saying that. I really do believe that Discovery, given that their main stuff is, cooking and do-it-yourself stuff, and publishing is a very important part of what they put on television. So I believe that they likely value DC Comics as much as they do DC film and DC television, and see it as a necessary part of the whole picture. How big of a part, I can't say.
I believe so far that's probably the case. I think the danger, everybody, the one thing, listen, I've been hearing that this business is going to die since I started.
Of course.
And people who were 50 years before me were probably hearing that themselves. That being said, do these companies now who keep buying one another and so on, do they care about DC Comics, the company, as much as they care about DC Comics' properties?
Sure. Yes.
The licenses doesn't need really. I mean, Batman doesn't need comics. I tend to think he does, but he doesn't really economically.
I understand, but I also think. Go ahead. Can you finish your thought? And then
yes, my thought is like so far so good. I think. But we're at the mercy of the guy someday who's going to come who doesn't give a shit about that.
But I do think if, let's say the worst case scenario, that DC gets out of comic book making, I do think like Star Wars and other properties, they would be licensed to comic book publishers. And truthfully, I do think the people now are making good comics. For example, IDW having the Star Trek license. CBS owns Star Trek, but IDW publishes Star Trek comics. Yes. We're getting good Star Trek comics, very good Star Trek comics. I mean, it's when we were little kids, the licensees that would get these things, like Charlton would get Hanna-Barbera and do cartoons.
It was considered as second-grade stuff. It's true. You're right.
And I think now like the comic buying community wants quality, and I think even the people that pick up the licenses are like, they take it seriously. I know for a fact, talking to IDW people, that they're like, we want to make good Star Trek stories. We want Star Trek fans to know that we give a shit too. And we're trying. So I really do think that, again, worst case scenario, if DC were to choose to do that, because I think Marvel gets it. Marvel understands the value of the comics. And of course, you know the story too, that back in the day in the late 70s, when Warner's was thinking about canceling the comics, Paul Levitz, as the publisher, is like, hey, we're an intellectual property laboratory. Yes. Let us develop new ideas that might be the future Batman and Superman.
I was very afraid when Paul was pushed out the door at DC.
Sure.
Because in my experience, he really understood what it was about. And both him, when he was at the head, and before that with Janet Kahn
Yes.
above him, understood how to be friends with Hollywood, but they also understood they knew how to tell them, let us do our job. You can always come and pick our brains, pick our stories for your movies. Let us work in our corner. And they were very good at keeping this distance. My fear was that with the generation that came later, they had Hollywood stars in their eyes. And it turned so far so good. Things have been okay right now. I mean, they seem to be comics come out. The quality is good, wonderful talent working and all that. So I don't want to, but I was scared for a while that these guys with Hollywood stars in their eyes, it's like now you're going into Hollywood's pocket. Hollywood's gonna chew you out and spit out the pit, like that may still happen. I don't know. They only care about what they can make a profit from, and they don't care about rewarding a talent as much as comics do. Even though I think comics doesn't do it well enough, it's worse in Hollywood.
I hear what you're saying, but I also think, for instance, literally this year, that new CW show, Naomi.
I haven't seen. Yes, I know about it. Yes.
Well, that's based on Bendis and David Walker's character from the comics, and that's brand new. I mean, that's not even more than 2 years old.
Yeah.
And they got a series out of it. And also I know, and I mean, again, I don't mean to just point out Brian Bendis, but I know these things for a fact. They're already developing an animated series for HBO Max based on Cover, and Cover has nothing to do with the DC universe, and it's him and David Mack, and it's a spy comic book about a spy whose cover is he's a comic book artist, and he travels internationally to conventions, but really he's on missions as well.
And everywhere he goes, people ask him, "Yeah, what's your real job?" Just like
you can't be doing this and traveling and stuff. Exactly. Too funny, man. No, I share your concerns, and certainly more so for you as a professional. But I do kind of think that the value of comics, and also, as you know, in the last 15 years, the creator-owned and independent side has really grown.
That is the best thing that has happened in the past. I don't know how. And again, I love DC and call me for covers, but how did they drop the ball on Vertigo? I will never understand that. I mean, good for Image. They pick up all the slack. They understand exactly what to do. Although they should do better with the union. Now that I've lectured everybody,
I like it. I agree.
It's not like I'm working for anyone right now, so whatever. No, seriously, I think these. I forgot what I was saying. I forgot.
Well, we were talking about creator-owned, and we were talking about
yes. That's the future. Obviously, that's the future. People who do that work, like we're saying, it's hard. You don't have a life and a life. You need to be able to control something, and if something is made on TV, in movies and that, the money should come to you, to the people who created it. We all know that's not always been the case, and without rehashing the past, people need to be in control of their creations.
Well, look at Robert Kirkman and the great success he's having with all of his original ideas, not only Walking Dead, but Invincible and other things that are in development as well. Here, Doc Midnight says, IP labs are everything to these people. Delivery is a different issue. I think some companies would want to be out of the business of losing gigantic sums of money and sell delivery versus selling the ideas. Yeah. All right.
I'm trying to I'll see Terry tomorrow. I'll have to ask him to elaborate on that. But he mentioned that like last time I saw him too.
Well, and right now some of the supply and delivery issues are out of all of our control. I mean, you see what's happening with the pandemic and the supply chain.
Well, Terry has his comic book store, so that's why he's.
Well, and I respect that absolutely.
That's he decided like to like all comic book store owners, like to go through loops and really bend over and gymnastics, all sorts of contortions to
Christian,
make
I
things work
honestly,
lately.
it's so funny. My family's like, why don't you buy a comic book store? I'm like, I respect the owners who understand how to make money with such a small profit margin,
Yeah.
and I can't imagine, especially the last 2 years, the heartache and the stress that they're
Yes.
going through. Even talking to our friends like Patrick and Dal at Challengers, or Art and Franco, who have their stores in Skokie, Illinois, and also in New York, Oh Yeah Comics in Muncie, Indiana. I don't know how they, honestly, I don't know how they do it.
I don't know either. I don't know either. It's not to mention like this. I mean, that's part of like the whole like imbalance in this business. This is not a business that makes money by selling to its customers. That's a business that makes money by saying to comic book stores. Comic book stores are the customers, and it's up to them then
100%.
later to sell it.
Yes, that's right.
That's already a flawed business with a direct market. It's a big pile of BS. I mean, it's great for the publishers. No matter what, their money is there. They can't lose money. They're
That's
paid up
right.
front, and
That's
hey, here we sell it to you. You do
right.
whatever
They
you
sell
want
it
with
to
it.
the Yes, they sell it to the stores, and that's job well done. The publisher's out of the equation. And as you say, yeah, it's really the stores that are the real customers.
How
And then that's
sustainable?
why,
How sustainable is it? I don't know. Then again,
well,
I've been saying it's going to collapse for 15 years, 20 years, and it doesn't. So I guess there's more
yeah,
than what I know.
no, and Doc, Terry, I understand what you're saying, and hopefully there are better distributing channels opening up in the wake of what we saw at the very beginning of the pandemic, and Diamond, kind of freezing for 2 months
Here,
and
I'm
not
going to
doing
tell you
any.
something. I'm going to tell you something you might not know. They also use the newsstand market was what was there before,
Yes.
and they kept the newsstand market alive a little. It still exists. So what they do, for example, like when you publish a comic book, say you sell 100,000 copies, you're lucky. It's a big sale nowadays,
Yeah.
or even nowadays almost very hard to get. But anyway, you do 100,000. 5,000 of these are gonna go to the direct market, to the newsstand market, and the rest is all 95% direct market. They did use that to screw authors out of royalties. A lot of people don't know that. The way it works is like, in order to recoup your money, your royalty share from the advance you receive when you draw, ink, write, whatever, you with the direct market, you're gonna recoup money at let's see, after 75,000, no, after 40,000 copies sold. So
Okay.
let's say on the direct market, you sell 40,000 copies. You'll get money after 40,001, you start getting a bit of royalties on it. With the newsstand market, because it's more expensive to put in place, you will get money after, let's say, 75,000 copies. Now, even if it's 5%, that's newsstand market, they applied it to the whole pot. In other words, they screwed authors out of the royalties that were due to them by using the newsstand market as an excuse, even though only 5% of these books barely were sold on the newsstand market.
Wow.
And we're talking about half the royalties here, just about half, okay? A lot of people don't know that. I mean, I think they changed that system. A few people who were aware of it had enough push managed to get out of it, but a lot of us got screwed with that.
I understand, man. No, that's horrible. And again, that's why it's really important as soon as you're a name to try and come up with something creator owned that you have more control over, and then certainly can benefit from the profits. I mean, we're seeing now all the people that are involved with Substack and that are making comics. Are you aware of the whole Substack thing?
I'm not sure what it is exactly. I've heard about it, but I'm not very clear on what it's about.
Well, they want to, and I mean, unfortunately, and as someone that is careful on social media, they kind of want you to engage with the audience through Substack, giving blog posts and making videos, process videos of you drawing, and then and various other ways, even doing podcasting and video interviews. And it's grant money. Substack will give you seed money to fund your comic that is free money, but what they ask for is some sort of arrangement, depending on the deal, of 2 years or whatever of posting to an exclusive audience on the Substack platform. Like I said, creating a newsletter and having it available to subscribers that way. So it kind of later you can still take those comics and put them in the direct market and either publish them yourself or go to Image or some other publisher. But for the initial digital comic, they want it on Substack.
Is it solely digital format originally?
It's digital first.
Okay.
But it's like digital first for depending on
a limited period of time.
Yeah, well, and sometimes it's only 6 months. I mean, I know creators that started with Substack last year that are putting out their first direct market books of their Substack digital first material, and they're able to do it with another publisher.
So if I understand if I understand you correctly, they subsidize your production of a comic.
Yes.
A digital comic book.
For free. I mean, well, it's grant money. It's not money that you have to pay back in any way.
Okay, so they pay you to produce a comic. Let's say it's gonna. Yes. In exchange, you will advertise it by promoting it, by interacting on social media with people,
and all that. Yes, but also your real blog posts are on the Substack platform.
Okay, and you use their platform.
Yes, they started off as a news.
On which they advertise, I suspect.
I'm sorry, ask again.
They advertise on their platform, which is a way for them to get money back,
and also they sell Substack. You tell the readers of the comic book, you can get it on Substack if you subscribe, and I believe Substack gets a piece of that money.
Okay,
and their whole intent is to get the audience to go to Substack and not only support the creator that they are.
The readers get it by subscription?
Yes.
Okay. And so let's say it's 2 years. After 2 years, you own all the right, you're free and clear. You walk away if you want?
Well, I believe so. And also, like I said, I know certain Substack people that it's been less than a year, and they are taking that first arc that was exclusively available on the Substack platform to Substack subscribers. They are now able to then create a creator-owned comic book, take it to the direct market for anyone to buy, and go through the usual creator-owned process, whether it's through Image or another publisher or whatever. And Substack doesn't touch that profit later.
So it's
go ahead.
Listen, it could be interesting. I don't know, honestly. I think. Listen, the world is changing like always, and so that means new bit of advance to the benefit creator. Terry seems to think it's good for creators there.
Yeah.
And,
it is, but it is a very exclusive club that has been afforded this opportunity.
I get it.
You can't just walk in and go, "Hey, I'm here for my Substack grant."
Yeah. No, I get it. It's invitations only.
Yes, and it's all the top writers and artists that are being offered. Grant Morrison just got offered one, or they announced that he's doing it. Tom King is doing it with wonderful French artist. Shame on me for not asking earlier. Are you aware of Ilse Chartier?
By name.
She's great. Honestly, man, when things open up again and we're more comfortable at conventions and stuff, I hope to introduce you sometime.
Okay, sounds great.
She's brilliant and she's just a very nice woman.
That sounds great because I've seen her name and I remember because her name sounded familiar. I don't know, on a comic book website. I don't remember where.
Sure.
And so I Googled and I was like, comic book. So I checked out some of the artwork that was beautiful. I was like, oh, cool. That's
very Darwin Cook. I think very Darwin.
30 years ago, whenever I came, I was the only French dude like working here. You had to be physically present here. I mean, it was hard to send continentally, like with FedEx and all that. It was almost impossible. And now people from all around the world work. They just scan, send.
How about Olivier Coipel?
I know Olivier. I met him about 10 years ago, like whatever, 12 years ago. It's wonderful guy. I mean, look, Look at a great story. A kid who comes out from like the suburbs of Paris and that is an international star. Now he lives, I don't know, like 12 years ago, he was living in Brazil. I don't know, I think he's in Portugal now. I don't remember. Good for him, in huge success.
I hear you,
This
man.
kid,
No,
this kid, like, he's not a kid anymore. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean. No, exactly. I'm the same way, man. I call 40-year-olds kids. I know exactly what you mean, man.
Yeah, no. Olivier's a good guy too. A very nice guy.
Kyle Higgins introduced me to Olivier.
Yeah, I met him in Toronto. I think we were there with Doug, like in 2010, something like that. Olivier was there, and we just met, hit it off, like hung out a bit and all that. Like that's also where I met Jeff Lemire, who had just finished like a Sweet
Lemire.
Tooth.
Yes.
And he was sitting next to us, to Doug and me. We were like sitting next to one another, and that was funny because I was doing Lobo sketches for people, and people were coming to him with Sweet Tooth. They were like, "Oh, you really made me cry. That was so wonderful," and that. And then Jeff was telling me, what I really would like to do is do Lobo. Like, that was hysterical. Just like.
I'm so happy for Jeff. Jeff's just doing so well.
Very nice guy too, like a wonderful
sweetheart of a guy. Very sweet guy. And he's coming on Word Balloon in the next couple of weeks, so I'm excited.
Awesome. I'll check it out.
Oh yeah. No. I mean, that's honestly, Chirstian, like yourself, it's been such a delight these almost 17 years now. There'll be 17 years in May to get to know everybody and watch their success and see them do so well. And man, Jeff's a perfect example of that.
Yeah,
God, all of his comics, and especially the ones that made us all cry. But I mean, Black Hammer's amazing. What he's doing for Dark Horse,
all his stuff is great. He's doing something with Doug right now. Swamp Thing, Green Hell. Check out the first issue; it's beautiful. I read it; like it's pretty great. Like with Doug Monkey. I mean, beautiful.
That's excellent, man. Very, very cool. Well, honestly, we've had a lovely conversation. We can wrap.
I'll tell you what. When that crop's over, let's have a beer, you and me.
100%. Jesus, man. Yes. So good to see you, dude.
Same here.
And I want, and truly, I only want the best for you and your family. And you're a talented guy. And I don't want us to just talk about Chirstian Almey's greatest hits. I want to talk about new stuff. So it's great that Wonder Woman Black and Gold, if everyone again wants to see recent work.
It's a great series too. Like it's a lot of different talents and different styles. It's beautiful. Just great to look at all that.
It's like Batman Black and White. Absolutely. Here, we'll show the art one more time. The final panel there at peace, as Diana should be. The sword in the dirt, so everything's all right now. No, gorgeous stuff, dude. And I'm so glad you got the opportunity to work with Pete again and do this beautiful work. And thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Jen.
Absolutely, man. Everybody, thanks a lot for watching.
Thank you, guys. Terry, Rolando, you guys, you know who you are. I'll see you tomorrow.
There you go. Absolutely. At Third Coast Comics, man.
Yep.
Everybody, great week next week on Word Balloon. February continues with a lot of your favorite creators, just like Chirstian Almey.